Oh, Tyler, you're a lifesaver. Thank you very much, Tyler. Okay, looks like we should have our guest now joining us on the screens here. If you could turn your attention to our screens, Melanie Morrison will be joining us.
I'm just going to look to share my screen now with you, and we'll take it from there. Can everybody see, can everybody see that? Does that look good from where people are sitting? Can everyone hear me and see the screen?
Yeah, we can see you just fine.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. That's wonderful to know. Well, hello, everyone. It's wonderful to be joining you today. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. It's the one few series of days that I'm out of Saskatchewan rather. And so I would have really loved to have been there to join you in person and to provide you, with this overview here. But today the chat is around creating transparency in terms of the ranch to retail price spread. So a year ago, around this time, I had a conversation with Chad McPherson as the GM of the Saskatchewan Stock Growers Association. And I had come across an article that wherein the Saskatchewan Stock Growers Association was calling for more transparency around retail pricing. And I thought, my goodness, we can certainly help here. We can start providing that insight because of some of the data that we have. So my name is Melanie Morrison. I'm the founder and CEO of a company called BetterCart Analytics, and we are a big data company that focuses on capturing retail pricing from all of the e-commerce sites from major retailers in Canada. So it's a pleasure to be speaking with you today and to provide you with some background about this project that we have been collaborating with the SSGA on, and the way that we look at this project being the first of potentially many iterations of pricing transparency that we can bring to the SSGA vis-a-vis beef pricing. So not so long ago, February 1st, 2023, there was a tweet that was put out on Twitter and looking at the retail beef dollar and scanning it there from 1970 to 2022 and highlighting just the change in terms of the retailer's share. We know that for the SSGA and many industry associations across the country, that clearly there's interest in the farm share, there's interest in the packers and what packers are doing and how packers have been behaving and their engagement with transparency around pricing for the last several years. And then clearly now a real eye to looking at what retailers are doing. And there's no time like the present really to start piecing these elements together so we can create greater transparency in the food supply chain and start tracking that retail rancher to retail price spread. So in this visual here, it looks like the packer share hasn't changed that much, which may be quite surprising to those in the room, um, because the assumption is that it likely has. And this is an empirical question. This is something that needs to be meted out in the data, and data that will be forthcoming, I am certain, as we continue to collaborate with the SSGA to get to the bottom of various, to get to answers here. So what you can notice though on the left is the farm share. price being at 64% around 1970, and then decreasing to 41% in 2022. And then you can look at something like the retail share there, the second largest piece of the pie there in 1970, and how large it is now. It goes from 23% to 48%. So this is exceptionally, this is of interest. This is concerning, and people want to understand this more so they can create advocacy around these issues and understand how to, ways to go forward here. So keeping that in mind, and certainly the viewership of this tweet has increased, and almost 100,000 people have looked at it or shared it. So also here, we've got various other articles that have come out. So here we are talking about JBS, and that the Brazilian beef giant, South America agreed to pay $25 million to settle a lawsuit accusing the company of conspiring with industry rivals to limit the supply of beef to artificially inflate prices. So we've got these packers here. The settlement, which is subject to approval by a judge, was disclosed by plaintiffs' lawyers representing a class of commercial beef purchasers in Minnesota federal court on Friday, according to court documents. So there's another settlement that's in place that JBS and its subsidiaries have reached in the case, with the company agreeing to pay $52.5 million last year to grocers and other plaintiffs that make up the direct beef purchaser class. As part of the new settlement, JBS will cooperate with ongoing cases against corporate defendants, so here including Cargill and Tyson, which have not settled yet, and that JBS has been implicated in a pork price fixing case for more than $20 million. So packers clearly are in the mix here and engaged in various behaviors that sometimes see the light of day and sometimes reach the court system, and payouts are made en masse here, and the implication is that all of the packers will be involved there. Right. More recently here, there was a recent article, the end of 2022 anyway, so about 5-6 months ago, looking at so the packers here in Canada, and consolidation has led to a few players. So there's only a few remaining in the country here who process cattle, who can, because of their size, control prices and the supply of beef, thus skewing the marketplace, and that is according to their critics. So these are issues that are ongoing in the supply chain, and trying to better understand from the SSGA's perspective what is happening here, and what is occurring in terms of the ranch price, the share price there, and how that is meted out in the rest of the supply chain. So there's some, these huge players, and obviously the goal is to be piecing this together over time. So let me tell you a little bit about what we do. So at BetterCart Analytics, we use machine learning and AI to pull in and capture billions of product records through e-commerce systems online there for major retailers in the country. So we pull in billions of unstructured price data points, pretty messy when they come into us. And then we transform this data into clean, labeled, and structured format so we can start making some sense of it. We then use, because all of the retailers, they call their products, different names, and they label them differently in order to create that uncertainty and confusion around similarity and exact product matching and so on. So what we do is we leverage natural language processing so that can streamline that process and make sense of things. And we also work on image recognition. And this is how we provide pricing intelligence to companies and industry associations that are interested in better understanding the food supply chain and the pricing in that affects it. We present usually our analytics on a customizable dashboard, and what we're really doing is saving any industry association from any manual searching So any physical data capture there. Our insights are, in real time. They're error free, and they're coming in relatively cleanly so that we can then surface them for our clients here. Um, Importantly, we also have a vast historical record that is growing. So this is important to the SSGA because what we can do is we can do some of this tracking of the price analytics that we have over time. And we're about 3 years strong now with respect to pricing. And that simply grows and grows over time. Right now, we have pan-Canadian coverage. So this was of value to the SSGA. It's not simply a single city. It's not a single region. It is from coast to coast to coast. We have 5 billion product records in our data lake, and we import 38 million new product records weekly across 37,600 stores and 21 retail chains. So this is our process, and as you can see, we're pulling in data from a lot of these retailers here. So this gives you a strong sense of the products that are in the grocery stores currently, and we really do cover all of the grocery products and retail shelves. Okay, so then the Stock Growers Association and I myself as CEO, we had this conversation and forged a collaboration, if you will, around some of the questions that the Stock Growers Association have, and looking at how we can start building a process and a database for the stock growers to rely on in the months to come, the years to come, and we'll continue to expand that data for you. So the project objectives here were to collect comprehensive pricing data at the city level for the products selected by the SSGA, aggregate the city level data to provide insights at the provincial level. So roll that all up across all of the different Real Canadian Superstores, for instance, all of the Save on Foods, for instance, the Metros, the Sobeys, and so on, and roll them up and aggregate them. Then aggregate the city level data to provide insights at the regional level, and then provide pricing insights and visualizations of interest to the SSGA, such as descriptives, price increases, decreases, and trend-based displays. So all of this data goes into a very large report that will in turn head off to the board and then the membership en masse. So here our methodology was the series of, the selection of products over time. So what were products that were of interest to the SSGA? And the first was ground beef, medium lean and extra lean, steak, inside loin and other, roast, loin, pot roast, and blade. There were 17 major grocery chains that were incorporated here that we could get meat pricing data for across the 10 provinces and 39 cities. The time frame was from January 2020 to March 2023. And as I mentioned, there's about a 3-year historical record that we have to pull from and we can look at. So in terms of the total data points collected, we're just shy of 400,000 data points that were pulled in for this project. We know that if we analyze it after March 6th, March 13th, and so on, that the number just expands. So right now I think it's up and over close to 500,000 products. So these are the types of insights that we're producing, and then knowing full well that this translates into various trend lines and visual depictions that appear in the final report. But what we're doing is taking these products through and we are aggregating them. So right now, across in 2020, the pot roast per kilogram price was $20.30 in Abbotsford, and that's the roll up of all of the different stores together. It grows to 22.8, 27.4 in 2022, and 30.4 in 2023. the difference here between the price change, and increase here between 2020 and 2023 is about a 49.75% increase. So this is quite large, in terms of the price point increase that we're seeing. And we can see that some of these cities are more elevated than others. And then we can look at some of the regional differences as well. So certainly if somebody wants to drill into this data, you can do this, and actually even tease apart in Abbotsford by retailer, and we can weight it in terms of how many retailers are involved there. So we can clearly, for the SSGA in future, and other linked industry associations, de-aggregate this even further from what you're seeing here and aggregate it further from what you're seeing here. Alberta, here we're looking at some of the differences here, and you can see some of the cities are, there are elevated price increases. Calgary, Edmonton, Lethbridge, and less so in Red Deer. So these are things now then, when we start to get a handle on what the data are showing us, that we are able then to have these conversations with the SSGA and determine, okay, based on your expertise and your knowledge of the industry, why might that be? And then we also have the option to reach out to, food policy personnel across the country and be able to get some insight around their thoughts about what's happening in the food industry and the food supply chain here. Saskatchewan, for instance, similar increases between Moose Jaw and Prince Albert, and Regina and Saskatoon are similar. There's a bit of a drop there, clearly, but this is, this might be of keen interest to the SSGA and being asked the question why. We've got Manitoba, Manitoba, Brandon, and Winnipeg, and we're looking at similar increases there, 49 point, almost 50% increase. And then looking at the larger province here being Ontario, and we can see that some of these changes. So for instance, in Oshawa, it's quite a sizable, almost a 63% increase. Ottawa, another increase there, less so in Barrie, Guelph, certainly Hamilton, and Toronto around 29% there, Windsor at about 33. Yes, 38%. Okay. So this is one element that we're tracing and tracking. So then what we will do is provide, as it is in the report, we can then look at, okay, where are these differences most pronounced, and start tracing back to to getting the answers as to why here. Let's continue on. Get this to change for me. There we go. Okay, so then we also have differences here. So, the cost in kilograms, and so this is $11.15, $11.70, and so on, in terms of the regular ground beef. And this gives you a sense in 2020, what this was across the provinces, and we'll be syncing this with the following years. So then you can see 2021 and some of the increases and decreases retrospectively, prospectively here, 2022, and we can keep an eye on these increases and decreases by province, and then as well over time. So that'll be valuable to the SSGA to better trace that. And then we can also do things like the retailer analysis as well. So that's something that we want to, can everybody still hear me?
Yeah, we can still hear you. You're just a little bit laggy. That's why.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay.
That's okay.
So additional analyses that we are looking at is the breakdown by retail chain and banner. So that will inform potentially where the prices are more elevated versus those that are less elevated. The predictive modeling, so what we would expect, as well as time series analyses, what we would expect next year's pricing to be. So that can be informative as well as we start reverse engineering and filling in these blanks. Um, and what I want to, impress, upon the SSGA and the membership is really that there is no end to which we can do these analyses. So we're sitting on a very, very large database, and the more questions that are asked, the data can be mined, additionally and ad nauseum here, so that we can get as many answers as possible. The implications here is to, as time goes on here, is to utilize data that is now becoming available. So this retail data was not always available to um, groups like the SSGA, to other industry associations and other food sector stakeholders in the supply chain. So this is now becoming available, and we can harness this data and bring it in and start making sense of it. The goal, implication is that we can increase traceability from where ranchers leave off in the chain and trace pricing throughout the rest of the supply chain. We can start mapping the rancher to retail share to start filling in the unknown, so that we're not taking data from potentially the states. And although, the argument could be made that there might not be that much difference, similar systems, similar packers, everything else, but nevertheless, there can be some differences certainly that we could uncover here. And it's now possible due to greater transparency of endpoint pricing. So that backing it up in time and looking at that. So that's a great starting point and great place for us to be. So when we look at it, in terms of collaboration and what we'll continue to do and build out for the SSGA is, we view ourselves as sort of the two bookends. You're the starting point and we're an endpoint with that retail pricing. And it's the variables in between that we want to understand about the costs associated with each successive step there in the supply chain, and be able to fine tune that and create that transparency so that what you can expect and how to advocate, negotiate. Sorry, just one sec. Just so, and that being a key goal for us to work on. And then essentially here, overarching goals, and as we move on, start tracing beef pricing throughout the supply chain, increase transparency for ranchers' benefit, provide data that can elevate ranchers' advocacy efforts, and ensure that the proportion of the beef dollar that ranchers receive increases from year to year and does not shrink. So that's something that we'll continue to work with the SSGA on, and provide any data that we can on that end of the supply chain and that endpoint pricing that consumers are seeing, and speak to the the price points that consumers are facing, and we can back that up, and that's where I'll leave it today. Thank you so much.
Melanie Morrison, thank you very much. And we do have some time here. We actually got quite a bit of time here for questions. If you would like to ask Melanie any questions as we move forward, we do have one from Richard.
Hello, Richard Marlowe. So I was just looking at the BC pot roast slide, and I'm not sure. Like there's some pretty significant changes there, some 65% and some only, close to 20%. But
right.
What's really important, I guess, if you're going to do any analysis, this is a comment or what I'm thinking is that you're going to have to make sure that your starting point is standardized, right? Because there's a discrepancy in the starting points with the series, so you'll have to I'm thinking you're going to have to come up with like I say, a way to standardize it so that you know that the starting point is representative of the past 3 years, or that there's a discrepancy there. So You follow what I'm saying?
Yeah, you're just talking about standardizing the base for the start there, for the first price point?
Yeah, because you got a different starting point for each center, but then the changes aren't necessarily the same. So you have to take that into account.
Okay, so so we can certainly look at that. Just that the the respective starting point and then the end point divided by that start point is the percentage change that we are documenting there.
Come again?
Oh, just the start point. So we take the end point and then we subtract the start point.
Yeah, but
And then
I guess you're putting a lot of weight on the start point as an accurate reflection of what's happening in that market, and that may be an anomalous portion, or it might your starting point might have to be adjusted, I guess, or to be more representative of what's happening in that market. Like 3 years may not be a long enough time frame. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good point. So, so Richard, what we have here is this start point being January 2020, essentially. So we've got the year rolled up and it's averages essentially. So this is the best that we can go back in time to gather in terms of the pricing. This is as far reaching as it goes, but then we can take what you're saying into consideration and see if there's any adjustments made. Obviously, with the pandemic in there, there's certainly room to interpret the analyses with caution here, because what we'd probably want to be doing is tracking from, we want to see what 2023 holds, and we're only a few months into 2023. So I would envision that this will be changing, and what might be of value to us is to be running this later on in 2023 and then document the changes, and then we're about 4 years out from that start point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Your name,
Great
please.
point.
Yeah, Glenn Snyder. Thanks for the presentation there, Melanie. That was very helpful. And thank goodness for AI. That's a huge database that you've got there. My question is do you apply this model to the so-called fake meats as well, or the alternative meats?
Yes, we do. So that's a great question. And thanks, Glenn. We do that. And so this is another piece that the SSGA has indicated, certainly in my conversations with some of the board members, that this would be something of interest. So we do have data on all of the vegetable analogs, and this could be highly valuable as well, just to look at the difference in price points and the comparisons and what you can draw from that. There's also potential here to use this data to support marketing, sales efforts, and more advocacy.
Okay, my second question is do you track slotting fees?
Slotting fees?
Yeah, in terms of paying for shelf presence from the different manufacturers as well?
That's a good question. No, we don't at this time. So in here, when we're talking about us being these bookends, it will be about collaborating with people, starting in the SSGA and then learning, how we can piece in more of this pricing. And certainly some of the later on presentations today might be able to, if we all collaborate together, we might get there and be able to fill in some of these gaps as we move forward. But we don't have that data right at the moment.
Yeah, I think that might be helpful for our industry as well, just to see who's paying for what in terms of presentation on the shelf.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
Okay.
Next question, your name, please.
Brett Noss, producer.
Hi, Brett.
I would like to know, has there been anything done with Beef Information Center, or to use analytics, not just to analyze where money is going, but to look at the development of products, maybe look at if consumers are reading labels or making choices on labels. But also, as I say, characteristics in consumer behavior to develop products and expand our markets instead of just fighting over who's supposedly making excessive profits.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's great. I mean, clearly these are different, different elements, but they're so important, right? So to broaden the scope and the expansion of the industry, with new products being developed. So, bringing in what that would take probably is a starting point is the literature review there. So that would be a function of something that certainly a group like my own company could look at and conduct to get a sense of what consumers are looking at in terms of what they're valuing right now, right? Because we have so many things. Just one second, I apologize. We have certainly there's literature out there talking about what consumers are doing, so collating that and bringing that in, and then getting some summary statements that could guide groups like the SSGA. Certainly that is there for the taking in terms of learning more about it, so it's not an impossibility by any means, Brent, and that's something that could definitely be undertaken to find out what's important to consumers if they're looking at ingredients, where they might go. We know that the vegetable analogs it does hover around price a lot of the time, and many consumers are walking away. They're not as keen to try them. Those products, the prices are often viewed as exorbitant. So that is a block or challenge for the vegetable analog producers. And the beef industry could potentially benefit from that. Clearly by them outpricing themselves, if you will, and not being of interest to consumers. And then there's also the health concerns as well. So, people not as impressed with those ingredients as they might have been. The fat content and various things that are put into the products. So I think there is definitely data that information literature that could be pulled in, and that could be a next step to better inform that aspect of the process here.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
is there a further
thank you.
question?
No, that was...
Any other questions here this morning? I do have one quick question, Dr. Morrison. Do you follow or do you talk to Sylvain Charlebois frequently?
Yes, we do actually. So he is somebody that we often are able to provide data to help him better understand some of the agri-food related issues in the industry. So food industry, grocery industry, etc., around pricing. And obviously he's a lead on Canada's food price report. And where we started was essentially looking at what Statistics Canada was putting out and how that was potentially problematic. The CPI, there was a lot of sizing of grocery items that did not actually exist in grocery stores anymore. And so we started collaborating in and around that. And will most likely be a provider of data for Canada's food price report going forward. So we're definitely building a very strong relationship and collaboration.
The reason why I asked, that he wrote an article here a little while ago. This was actually in the Toronto Sun, and it was just talking about prices and grocery retail prices and that type of stuff. And it was actually a survey that his lab at Dalhousie University did. And one of the questions in there was talking about whether or not the government should develop a crown corporation to sell groceries. And 4.5%, I think it was something like 4.5% thought that was a good idea. Would that be a good idea, and how would that affect beef producers in a good way or in a bad way, or really not at all?
Well, I think if the government were to do something like that, I would say that, there would be certainly some quote unquote regulation around that. And I think that it depends on the mission and what they're going to be trying to do there. Would it be it's something to equalize it? Obviously, there's a need to diversify um, the retail the retail offerings here in the country. It's something that could certainly play a role in diversification then, and I think that is never a bad thing necessarily. So I think that's something that could certainly help Canadians if the mission's correct, right, and that they're looking out for Canadians in terms of price point and making food as affordable as possible. That's really key right now, and there's too many consumers that are having such a difficult time putting food on their tables and managing the skyrocketing food prices. So it's something to potentially consider, and I would think that as more thoughts put into it, that percentage in agreement of that might grow.
Dr. Melanie Morrison, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much. Yes. Greetings from Alaska. Thank you.
All right, we are coming up on 12 o'clock. Time for lunch. This is all thanks to Young's Equipment and Real Agriculture for sponsoring today's luncheon. And if you have an opportunity, by all means, take a look at the trade show. If you'd like to check out that and have a few more questions, by all means, check out the trade show. So thank you again, Young's Equipment. I know Tim Young is here. He was busy cooking last night for all of you, and he definitely wants to feed you here today. A great big thank you to many of our sponsors here this morning and this afternoon. Our silver sponsors, Helium Evolution, MNP, Scotiabank, Still Hill Ranch, Calvin and Sandra Noss, TD Canada Trust, Vito, and Visit Moose Jaw. Our bronze sponsors, Barber Motors, BMO, Cargill, Animal Nutrition, and Great Western Brewing, as well as Livestock and Forage Center of Excellence, Mankota Stockman's Way Company, Nelson Motors and Equipment, and Prairie Land and Investment Limited. So if you want to take a break, we've got an hour or so. We're going to reconvene at 1 o'clock, and you can enjoy a nice meal right now.